How's it going? Welcome back to another great video with the majestic host, the Savior. Yes, back at it again, and as always I have the devil on both shoulders. If you're new to the channel you might not know this, but I do have problems with VR. I do think it can be used in a very dystopian, technocratic way, I suppose. But for gaming, of course, this is, revolutionary. But sadly, I still feel that VR games are lacking. Most VR games still very much feel like just tech demos. They never feel warranted to actually, splash out the money for, a new VR game, because they all usually end up being tech demos. There have been a few, like Saints and Sinners, for example, for Walking Dead, or Half-Life Alyx, okay? Boneworks, they do exist, Blade and Sorcery, but a lot of them usually are just very quick and one and done type experiences. And ironically, VR gaming isn't as immersive as some 2D games that have the attention and detail put in them. For example, like the Metro 2033 series or Baldur's Gate 3, just to name a few, The Witcher 3. VR gaming is still lacking a lot in that department. But finally, we've got another proper VR title. So if you are new to the channel, make sure that you do subscribe. It only takes 2 seconds, but it means absolutely everything to me. We are getting close to 10k subscribers. Be a wise boy, be an intellectual, and join this fantastic community. I put so much effort into all of my content, and it just means so much to me. If you do subscribe, like I said, it really does only take 2 seconds. So what are you waiting for? Join this community today and be a part of something great. I will quickly give my thoughts on VR as it stands right now, because we've got the new Meta Quest at the end of the video. But now let's get into the reason why you are watching this video and talk about Arizona Sunshine 2. Is Arizona Sunshine 2 worth it? Should you buy it? Should you skip it? If you are a VR owner, is this worth your time? Is it even worth perhaps buying a VR device just to play this game? Okay, that's what I want to answer with this video. I have actually play tested it myself. VR developers are always very kind because they are a lot smaller and reach out to me with codes and stuff like that. But of course I can't show you new gameplay today because I've got to stay under the regulations. That's if YouTube doesn't demonetize this video, because there's a lot of gore in this, and YouTube at the moment are complete goddamn... It doesn't make sense when YouTube is a platform built for adults worldwide. It's bigger than old media and TV, so it's just so crazy how restrictive it is. But anyway, so here is my Arizona Sunshine 2 review, my Arizona Sunshine 2 VR review, and I do hope you enjoy this game review because we don't get many exciting VR titles. I think the last one that I was really excited about was Bone Labs. So like I do with all of my game reviews, I'm going to go into the positives and the negatives of this Arizona Sunshine 2 review, so you can make the decision based on, the pros and the cons, and hopefully you will be able to decide if it's worth buying. So let's first talk about the first game quickly, okay? Now the first game was good, okay, but it was a very arcadey, zombie, linear story game, and the story wasn't that interesting. The characters weren't interesting. It was a early VR title, so you can't expect much, but it was pretty much an arcadey, linear shooter. It kind of reminds me of the earlier arcade games where you're just kind of walking in one straight line, and then tons of enemies come up at you and you shoot. There wasn't much exploration. The looting was kind of limited because the interaction kind of technology at that time wasn't really developed at that point. Only after Boneworks and Half-Life Alyx did VR really kind of step up in my opinion. But I don't think since those games VR has evolved that much. And they did have co-op in Arizona Sunshine, but it was a little bit broken. The way the characters moved when you were watching your friend and stuff like that, and just technical issues aside, it wasn't all that amazing. But I think this one is a lot better because I haven't done co-op, but what I have seen of co-op, it looks a lot more smoother, the animations look better. So the first positive of Arizona Sunshine 2 is the fact that now you have a little companion. So if you are playing solo, it won't be a lonely adventure, you have a little dog. And they did a really good job of implementing this dog in, a zombie game, especially in a VR title, because you can, do a lot of things with this dog. It can fetch you, items which you will need for survival. It will attack enemies for you, or you could just cripple the enemy, shoot them in the arm or the leg. For example, you can use your dog to attack the enemies. You can, take off certain body parts and then use the dog to your advantage. So it is a really cool feature, and there is a lot of detail, in this game, and I'm going to talk about that more, but the dog has so much detail. The way it gets covered in blood after it gouges out a zombie, or the way you can customize it with little items that you find around the world, put on a collar or a hat or whatever on top of the dog's head. It's just very well done, and just, kind of stroking it, playing fetch with it, that's a super cool mechanic, It's basically Fallout 4, but realized much better, and it just works so much better in VR. So the next one is a negative, I would say, and that is the fact that this isn't very immersive, okay? For VR, for me, what makes a game good is, something like Boneworks, where the physics of the world feel as realistic as possible, where you aren't just floating arms, where you have a full body, you have physics behind it. When you're just floating arms, especially in a survival game, a survival kind of horror game, like a zombie shooter, it just kind of takes you out of the experience, I think, especially when you're looting stuff a lot of the time. You don't have a backpack or anything, you just kind of, put a grenade into your hand glove, that kind of thing. I just think it lacks immersion, and I know this is an arcade shooter, compared to something like Saints and Sinners, but still, the whole point of VR is to be immersive, and there is some cool details here on offer, as you just saw, but I do feel that, if you want that immersive experience, this is not the game for you, and it's not trying to be immersive, but it could have at least done a full body, physics-based system, which would make it feel a lot more immersive, because VR, like I just said, hasn't really evolved since Boneworks, not Bone Labs, since Boneworks or Half-Life Alyx, I would say, which is a shame. It's the same kind of gameplay mechanics, just walking through a linear straight path. There's more exploration here, but it is still just kind of a wave zombie shooter, and the kind of basic climbing VR mechanics where you're just floating arms, and you're just climbing up these designated areas or looting designated things, like some things you can't break, but other things like cars you can. So it's just a little bit limited, and that's a little bit of a shame, because what's here is good. So the next positive is the art style and the graphics. Now, graphics, I usually don't say matter, because art style is more important, but for VR titles, they do need to nail the art style or the graphics, and Arizona looks so good. The graphics here are very well done. It is an upgraded engine, so of course that helps. So the next positive here is just the detail on offer. Like I said, the detail here is pretty good, especially for a VR game. Compared to something like Saints and Sinners, where it was going for a more art style approach, which I think worked, this is going for a realistic kind of game world, a little bit cartoonish, but the gameplay is more on that arcadey side, whereas Saints and Sinners was going for more realism, but a kind of cartoony art style, which is quite interesting. I just wish they kind of balanced the two games together, because then it would be the perfect zombie game. But the detail is a lot better, but I still think that the way you loot and stuff like that does feel limited. Some items have more realistic physics, which is very satisfying. Food, or, the limbs of the zombies, which is very cool. And when you pick up a zombie's head, just the way, it kind of dangles and the jaw kind of wiggles around and stuff like that, that is what makes this game super cool and immersive. But the atmosphere, I feel, is lacking a little bit compared to something like Saints and Sinners. It's less scary and more just a fun, kind of action game. And the final negatives, I would say, is that the animation is still rather stiff in co-op, and with the zombies and NPCs, the way they move, it just doesn't feel as realistic, like they're waiting for you to kill them, which does take you out of it a little bit. Also, like I said, some items you just can't interact with or destroy. Maybe I'm just spoiled from Boneworks, but still. And the final thing is the melee combat, okay? It is satisfying, it is good, but again, because there's no physical body and the NPCs don't have a physical body system in place, it does feel rather arcadey, where you just kind of whack a zombie's head and it just kind of disintegrates. It has weight and impact, but it only really has that if you connect A to B, B to C. You know, you can't kind of have this dynamic combat, which is a shame. But like I said, there is more things to interact with compared to the first game. Like you can push around a trolley cart, you can, you know, push over bins to stop the zombies coming at you and stuff like that. So also the zombies here, which are now infected, actually this infection is kind of like an armor-based system, which is pretty cool. So you can't just like pop them in the head, you have to kind of slowly chip away at them, which does add variation to the gameplay. And later on, of course, there's more brutish enemies, bigger ones and stuff like that. So that is my Arizona Sunshine 2 review, my Arizona Sunshine 2 game review. I do hope you enjoyed this one. It was just a quick one. I just thought I would cover it because I never talk about VR games much on this channel, unless if it's like a big game. But sadly, I don't think this is, you know, revolutionary. I don't think that VR has really come a long way. The technology is getting a little bit better, you know, with the pixel density, the face scanning, and all this stuff. But the actual gameplay mechanics, the gameplay design, and the fact that there still isn't a massive market for it makes these games all feel rather similar and hollow. And it all just feels like you're playing like just different demos, but they're all using the same gameplay mechanics, kind of rinsed and repeat. That's my problem with VR gaming. You know, there's not like a super detailed, realistic loading system in place here, not like something like Onward or something like that. I just feel like VR gaming hasn't come a long way, but hopefully that will change in the future. And my final closing thoughts about just where VR is at the moment. I still don't support it. I still think that, you know, we should be very careful about talking about VR and implementing it in our lives, especially with children, because I do think it is, you know, a step too far in this current climate where we are already completely brainwashed and just so consumed by content and distraction. You know, so many scientific studies have shown that creativity is on the way down, that attention span is on the way down, thanks to social media, these platforms made to divide us, like TikTok and stuff like that, and big companies that have the monopoly now on VR, like Facebook or Meta, they want to put you in a digital cell. They want to keep you isolated. They want to, you know, see exactly what you're doing 24/7 so they can sell more shit to you, and so it can become an even more dystopian consumer hyper-capitalist society, and I'm not really for that. So I do love VR gaming, but I just think that we need to be careful with this technology. So that is my closing thoughts on Arizona Sunshine 2. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.